Hi, moral recapped here. Today I'm going to explain about a romantic drama film called 5 Feet Apart. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie begins with Stella Grant mulling over the importance of human touch because she never really understood the importance of touch until she was unable to get a particular person's touch. In the next scene, Stella hangs out with her friends Maya and Camille. However, Camille excitedly lets the others know she may be able to hook up with a guy on a trip Stella won't be able to make. Stella, in good nature, jokes about Maya's Photoshop skills before bidding her friends farewell. However, when they leave, Stella puts on her nasal cannula and prepares herself for her treatments. Turns out she has cystic fibrosis and is back in the hospital. As she records her podcast, she is joined by her nurses Barb and Julia who administer her treatments. They also let her know that Poe, her best friend, is resting in another room. Before the nurses leave, Barb hands over Stella's medcart to Stella, thereby giving Stella control over her pills, which is fair enough because Stella is slightly OCD. Despite keeping a brave face, Stella gets into her routine of taking her medicine, crossing out activities on her lists and coding on her computer. Later that night, Barb tells her of a new baby in the maternity ward, so Stella goes to check it out. On the way there, she passes a sleeping Poe before going past another CF patient who is about to allow his friends have sex in his room. Cringe. Stella moves on. The boy who noticed Stella follows her to the maternity ward. He tries to introduce himself, but Stella ignores him because she doesn't like rule breakers who let their friends have sex in their rooms. They bicker until Barb arrives and is appalled to find both of them in the same room. Crews must stand 6 feet apart so that they do not contaminate each other with bacteria. As she shoos him away, Barb reveals the boy's name, Will Newman. She also reveals Stella's name. Before Will leaves, he tells Stella to chill out and not take life so seriously. After Will leaves, Barb reveals Will has B. Spacia, a deadly bacteria, and that he is part of a clinical trial. She warns Stella to stay away from Will. Later that night, Will goes online to watch Stella's video. He learns all about her and begins to like her. The next day, Poe FaceTimes Stella and reveals he is single. As they joke about being single, Poe begins to choke. Stella and the nurses rush to his help, but it turns out he is only choking on his food and is okay. Silly guy. Meanwhile, Will and his mother, Meredith, meet with Dr. Hamid, who warns Will not to come in contact with any other curs for their safety and his before reminding him to stick to his medical regimen so that the clinical trial could work. Colon enthusiastically agrees. Later that night, as Stella FaceTimes her friends, she notices Will sitting on the rooftops. She goes up to tell him to come down and to tell him that he doesn't know how lucky he is to be there, but all he does is clown around. She tells him to leave if he doesn't want to be there, so he pretends to fall off the roof. Upset, Stella leaves the rooftop. Later on, Stella can't focus because of Will, so she goes to his room. When she realizes that he isn't following his regimen, she gets upset and returns to the maternity ward, where Will joins her. She tells him to get back into shape because it's messing with her OCD. Will only agrees to fix up if she lets him draw her. Although she is initially reluctant, she agrees to the deal. She orders him to get a medcard into his room. Will meets Poe. Will tells Poe how he got B. Capacia. Poe then reveals Will's cavalier is probably why Stella is so strung up lately. He tells Will that despite her control problems, Stella has helped him with his regimen. Will thinks Poe is in love with Stella. Although Poe agrees that he does, Poe reveals that he is gay. In the next scene, Barb delivers Will medcart to him because he had requested it. She tells him to make sure she doesn't regret this. Later on, while Will and Poe watch out for Barb, Stella helps Will organize his medcart. As she leaves, she gives him an app she built to help him monitor his treatment. This girl is super organized. Sometime later, Poe tells Stella he knows she likes Will. Later on, she FaceTimes Will to see if he's following his schedule. After finding out that he is still slacking off, she decides they will do their regimen together. Will is cool about it. He knows she is always looking for ways to spend time with him. Despite the dumb joke, they do end up spending time together while following their regimen. Following this, Erin, Stella's mom, pays her a visit at the hospital. Erin tells Stella she loves her and that she doesn't know what she'd do without her. Later on, Dr. Hamid examines an infection developing around Stella's G-tube. After Dr. Hamid recommends that they monitor the infection, Stella goes to the gym to work out with Will. While they work out, Will reminds Stella that he wants to draw her. After much pestering, Stella poses for Will after their workout. Will learns about Stella's lists. When she tells him the contents of her list, he asks her why the list isn't adventurous. He tells her if he had a list, it would include traveling the world. At least traveling the world is better than being stuck within the hospital walls. Stella thanks him for saying something real. This brings them closer. Later on, Stella watches a video of her sister, Abby, as she skydives. Meanwhile, Julia, who is administering Will's medication, tells Will she likes seeing him being hopeful. Will, in a vulnerable moment, asks her what if the drugs don't work? Julia asks him what if they do? Shortly afterwards, Will gives Stella a cartoon picture of her. Stella FaceTimes Will to ask him why he drew her as a cartoon, but as they talk, Will notices one of Abby's pictures hanging behind Stella. Will asks Stella to see more of Abby's pictures, but Stella becomes uncomfortable and tells them they should only stick to taking their medication together before hanging up on Will. In the next scene, Will and his friends watch a video of Abby singing to Stella while going through Abby's social media. They realize Abby hasn't posted anything in a year. Later on, Will joins Stella for a meditation and reveals that he knows Abby is dead. An upset Stella doesn't want to hear anything about death because after Abby's death, she doesn't want to die on her parents. Will realizes that this is why Stella is so strict with her regimen. He tells her she has survivor's guilt and that she should stop trying to control everything. This upsets Stella, who storms off. Later on, Stella vents about Will to Poe. She then blames herself for Abby's death, but Poe tells her to stop torturing herself because it wasn't her fault. Sometime later, as Will tries to reach Stella in vain, Dr. Amid tells Stella that the infection has gotten worse, so she must have surgery. Stella is disappointed, but Dr. Hamid reminds Stella that she is a fighter. Stella appears encouraged, but when Dr. Hamid leaves, she slumps to her bed in despair. Moments later, Will slides an apologetic drawing to Stella. Stella opens up and tells Will he is forgiven before telling him that she'll have surgery tomorrow. Will, who is concerned, tries to talk about it, but Stella dismisses him. Stella then endures a restless night before heading to surgery the next day. While she is waiting in the prep room, Will sneaks in and sings the same song Abby sang for Stella before she prepared for surgery. Moments later, he sneaks off when the doctors turn up. However, he runs into Barb, who marches him off to his room. Will tries to make out that it isn't a big deal, but Barb tells him about a Kurz couple who got too close and died on her watch. She'd be damned if she lets that happen again. At the same time, Stella goes under for her surgery. The next day, Stella wakes up to a gift. Meanwhile, Will, who doesn't want to hurt Stella with his Kepisha, decides to ignore Stella's phone call. When she recovers fully, Stella excitedly prepares to see Will, not knowing Will's still upset. After Poe tells her Will isn't coming to see her, Stella tries to see Will, but Will turns her away. Poe tries to tell her to leave Will because Will, just like Abby, is a risk taker, but this only angers Stella, who tells him he isn't a risk taker either. After telling Poe to keep his advice to himself, she storms off. Following this, the trio wallow in their misery individually. However, that changes when Poe sends Stella a gift admitting she was right. Stella and Poe meet up later on and make up. Stella then notices a sign in the reception and gets an idea. Later on, Stella slides a drawing underneath Will's door before sending him a video where she tells Will that despite the dangers Kepisha pose, she is willing to come within 5 feet of someone she loves. She then turns up at Will's door and asks him if she's ready to come within 5 feet of her. Will agrees and they decide to meet on a date later on. After getting changed, the pair meet at the reception where they use a pool stick to maintain the 5-foot distance. During the date, Stella learns tomorrow is Will's 18th birthday. Later on, while they're by a pool, Stella reveals that Abby died while skydiving on a trip Stella was too sick to go on. Will consoles her before telling her she is beautiful. They both strip before jumping into the pool. Later on, as Stella tells Will about the lights out on the horizon, Barb discovers they aren't in their rooms. She asks Poe where they are, but Poe, who is asleep, pretends to be too sleepy. However, after Barb leaves him, Poe warns his friends. After separating, Stella rushes to the maternity ward and pretends she is asleep. This deceives Barb, who lets up after finding Stella there. The next day, Will calls Stella, excited that it's his birthday. Stella cannot hang out with him at the moment because she is studying. Will is okay because he plans on being with his friends. However, it appears his friends are unavailable as well. Even worse, Will's mom only sent him a note, which means he'll be spending his birthday alone. Later that night, Stella leads Will with a game of hide and seek and a set of balloons clues to his surprise party Stella planned with Will's friends. Later on, Poe tells Stella he and his boyfriend Michael are going to see his mom tomorrow. Poe's in love and Stella is happy for him. Later on, as the party goes on, Abby comes up and the revelers raise her drink to her because she lived a full life. However, as the party goes on, Barb, who they thought was off that night, crashes into the party and ends it. She confines Poe and Stella in their rooms while telling Will he'll be transferred tomorrow. Despite this, Will and Stella still FaceTime each other happily. The next day, however, Barb and Julia find Poe dead. Stella is distraught. Will tries to console her by touching her, but she chases him away before smashing everything in her room, including Poe's gift. Will meanwhile packs his things and leaves. Stella then notices the lights and decides to go to them. She notices Will at the reception. Will tries to discourage her from going, but Stella, who now wants to live, convinces Will to follow her. They get to a hill where they make snow angels. Stella also shows Will doll Abby gave her when she first got hospitalized. Shortly afterwards, they walk up to a frozen lake where they take a break. Back at the hospital, Dr. Hamid tells the nurses that a set of lungs Stella's size were on their way. Barb rushed to Stella's room to prepare her for surgery but only finds the empty room. They text Stella, who decides to ignore the call and hangs out with Will instead. Will tells her he loves her. Stella rushes over to him and knocks him over before telling him that she loves him. They almost kiss, but Will, who doesn't want to infect Stella, stops them. They rush off the ice when it starts cracking. Back at the hospital, the medical staff, along with Meredith and Stella's parents, search for their kids. Will receives a text from Meredith informing him about the lungs. He tries to get Stella to return to the hospital, but Stella doesn't want the lungs anymore. As they argue, Stella falls onto the ice. Although she is initially fine, Stella falls into the ice just as Will tries to help her. However, he manages to get her out of the water, but is forced to give her CPR. Although Stella is initially unresponsive, she eventually pulls through. In the next scene, Stella and Will arrive at the hospital. Although Stella doesn't want the surgery, Will convinces her to take the surgery. Will reveals he gave Stella CPR, but Dr. Hamid tells him they'll worry about that later. Following this, Stella has her surgery while the others wait. Sometime later, they learn the surgery is successful. Later on, Will and Meredith learn that Stella also didn't get infected with B. Capacia. Unfortunately, they learn that Will's treatments didn't work. Later on, as Stella recovers, Will asks Meredith, Stella's parents and the hospital staff for their assistance. After Stella wakes up, they show her a video where Will tells her that although the trials didn't work, the last month with her was the best of his life. His only regret is that she never got to see the light. He puts on a light show for her outside her room. He then tells her that he must leave her if he truly loves her so that she can survive. He then asks her to close her eyes so he can leave. When he leaves, Erin gives her Will's drawings of her, which break her heart. In the final scenes, as Stella goes through her memories, especially those of Will, she re-emphasizes the importance of touch in one's life before urging everyone to touch their loved ones. The story serves as a perfect example of the fact that even the most infectious disease cannot kill true love, whether there is contact or not. Don't forget to subscribe the channel and like the video. Thanks for watching.